Assalamualaikum dear students. Today we are going to learn about another very important wastewater treatment technology, which is a natural treatment method, the simplest treatment method, and at the same time it is very efficient at the treatment of wastewater. This is wastewater stabilization ponds. So in principle, waste stabilization ponds, they are also called wastewater stabilization ponds or simply waste stabilization ponds. WSPs, we will refer to them as WSPs from now onwards. So WSPs are shallow man-made basins into which wastewater flows and from which, after a retention time of several days, a well-treated effluent is discharged. So as I said on the title slide, this is a natural treatment process. Just man-made basins are constructed, wastewater flows into these basins, spend several days time here, and during this time bacteria and other microorganisms under natural conditions oxidize the organic matter. Nothing is provided, no oxygen supply, no recirculation of sludge. So this is completely a natural process. So as you can imagine, in comparison to activated sludge process where oxygen is supplied and sludge is recirculated to increase the concentration of microorganisms, then in aerated lagoons sludge is not recycled but oxygen is supplied, and here in waste stabilization ponds you do not supply oxygen and you do not recirculate the sludge. So under the natural conditions, obviously bacteria would require much more time as compared to activated sludge process as well as aerated lagoons to oxidize that organic matter. Therefore, retention times are longer and large surface area and volumes are required in case of WSPs. Advantages of WSPs are simplicity, low cost and high efficiency. Low cost in the sense that no mechanized um, equipment is to be provided, but just one cost is involved, that is the land cost. If the land cost is cheaper, it would be a low cost option, perhaps the cheapest amongst all other treatment options. But if land cost is high, as is in the case of urban areas, then it won't be a feasible option obviously. Entirely it depends on the land cost. Otherwise, no operation maintenance costs, very little O&M cost is required as compared to other treatment processes, and very low capital cost if the land is cheaper. Because of these properties, simplicity is simple to use, simple operation and maintenance, is low cost where land is cheaper and available, and it is highly efficient. These are highly appropriate for use in developing countries like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh and other developing countries. So WSP system overall comprise of a single series of falling ponds. So these are three types of ponds which are provided in series: anaerobic ponds, facultative ponds and maturation ponds. You are familiar with these two terms, anaerobic and facultative. We have talked about this in the start of the biological treatment topic. Anaerobic means in the absence of oxygen, facultative means both in the presence and absence of oxygen. And the third one is the maturation pond, which is provided to remove the pathogens from the wastewater. First two ponds are provided principally, first is the anaerobic pond and then is the facultative pond, and third one is the maturation pond. So the first two ponds purpose is to remove organic matter, BOD. So BOD removal is the purpose of the first two ponds, and the purpose of third pond is to remove the pathogens. So in a sense you can say that the first two ponds are doing the secondary level of treatment, and the third pond, maturation pond, is doing the tertiary level of treatment, that is the removal of pathogens. One more thing you can learn from this schematic figure is that the depth of anaerobic ponds is the greatest among all three ponds. Then comes the depth of facultative ponds, and the aerobic maturation ponds are the most shallow ponds. This decreasing depth also plays a role for making it an anaerobic, facultative and aerobic pond. When the greater depth is provided, oxygen from the surface cannot penetrate to the bottom ends of the pond, and there is a high BOD load because this is the first pond uh, to interact with the wastewater. So high BOD load and greater depth make it anaerobic pond. Shallow depth and less BOD make it a facultative pond. Bottom depth would be anaerobic, whereas top depth would be aerobic. And third pond, which is the most shallow one, would be fully aerobic because of its very little depth and very little amount of organic matter which is left here. Another interesting thing to know about WSPs is that the first pond in series of WSP system, that is anaerobic pond, referred to as AN here, that anaerobic pond is basically serving the purpose of primary sedimentation tank, because when WSP system is provided, no primary or no secondary sedimentation tank is required. So first pond of its nature, that is anaerobic pond, serves the purpose of primary sedimentation tank. So if you just require the primary level of treatment, you can simply provide an anaerobic pond, and if it is a settled wastewater from a previously primary sedimentation tank, or the wastewater is of very small strength, means it can be easily treated with the facultative pond, so you just provide a facultative pond. Okay. And in most of the circumstances, all the three ponds are provided in series: anaerobic, then facultative, and then maturation. Effluent from anaerobic pond, which is settled effluent now, will come to the facultative pond. The dissolved BOD will be removed here, and after this secondary level of treatment, the effluent from this goes to maturation pond, which provides the removal of pathogens. And it is written over here that this is optional, so obviously removal of pathogens would be an optional step depending upon the requirements, discharge requirements, or particularly if you want to reuse the wastewater for irrigation, then maturation pond must be provided to remove the pathogens. This arrangement shows you the parallel to number of anaerobic ponds. This would not increase its efficiency. This is just to divide the flow, as we are discussing, and we have been doing this for many other treatment processes that two units are provided. So this is that configuration in which two parallel units of anaerobic pond are provided. Similarly, two parallel units of facultative pond to reduce the surface area can be provided, and followed by a maturation pond. This is another configuration: two anaerobic ponds in parallel, then a facultative pond, and then a maturation pond. Single anaerobic, two facultative in parallel, and a maturation pond. Two anaerobic, two facultative, and a maturation pond. So these all are multiple configurations which can be applied at various situations depending upon the requirement, depending upon the nature of wastewater to be treated, depending upon the effluent required quality. So one thing more to be noted here is that this maturation pond represented with a single tank is not always a single reactor or single pond. Number of maturation ponds in series are required to achieve a significant pathogen reduction. So this is just representation of the maturation pond here. So in many of the circumstances, only anaerobic and facultative ponds would be required, as I mentioned on the previous slide. And in general, maturation ponds will be required only when the treated wastewater is to be used for unrestricted irrigation. If you use the wastewater for irrigation purposes, there are two categories of such irrigation. One is restricted irrigation, the other one is unrestricted irrigation. In restricted irrigation, the wastewater is applied for the irrigation of crops which are not consumed by humans, such as industrial crops like cotton, and for those crops which are consumed by humans only after processing and cooking, such as wheat crop. So for those kind of restricted irrigations, the criteria or standards or guidelines for wastewater quality are a bit lenient, whereas unrestricted irrigation, in which there is no restriction to the type of crop, raw eaten vegetables and fruits can also be grown with this quality of wastewater, that is termed as unrestricted irrigation. So for such irrigation, the wastewater effluent standards are a bit stringent one with respect to pathogen concentration. So if the intended reuse of wastewater is unrestricted irrigation, strict pathogen standards apply. So you have to treat the wastewater with the maturation pond so that removal of pathogens can be ensured prior to its application for unrestricted irrigation. Now let's discuss about some advantages and disadvantages of WSPs. Advantages are high reduction in pathogens which cannot be accomplished by any other secondary level of process. For that you have to use a tertiary level of treatment using disinfection techniques. However, the WSPs, which are natural treatment processes, the third type of pond in this series, which is maturation pond, can significantly reduce the pathogen. They can be built and repaired with locally available materials. Obviously, no import of materials, no complex machinery is involved, low operating costs, no electrical energy required, and no real problems with flies, odors if designed correctly. Some disadvantages are they require very large land area as compared to all other treatment processes, and the variable capital costs are involved depending upon the price of the land. A third disadvantage is sometimes referred to as the possible growth of mosquitoes or other vector-borne pathogens. Let's now discuss about all the three types of waste stabilization ponds, including anaerobic ponds, facultative ponds, and maturation ponds individually in detail. First, anaerobic ponds. These are commonly 2 to 5 meter deep and receive a high organic loading, usually greater than 100 grams of POD per cubic meter of pond volume per day. So with this depth, high depth and high organic loading, they contain no dissolved oxygen and no algae in it which can produce oxygen. This is a typical section of anaerobic pond. Its depth is 2 to 5 meters. Here is the inlet, here is the outlet, which is an earthen man-made basin. So as the wastewater enters this pond, the sludge, the suspended solid would settle at the bottom in the form of sludge, and since there is no oxygen available in this pond due to its uh, greater depth and high organic loading which has been applied, very little amount of oxygen can be transferred from surface from air, but the requirement of oxygen is quite high in the tank because of high organic load. Therefore, it is practically devoid of oxygen, so it is an anaerobic pond. So sludge is decomposed anaerobically. So under anaerobic conditions, you know, methane is produced, H2S is produced, carbon dioxide, ammonia is produced. Methane is good, but cannot be collected from such a large surface area. H2S is a problematic gas which produces the odors. So this is one of the disadvantages of anaerobic ponds. Usually the BOD and suspended solids removal by anaerobic ponds are in the range of 40 to 70%, and retention times are short, around 1 to 5 days. These are short with respect to the retention time of other ponds such as facultative and maturation. Otherwise you can see that as compared to activated sludge or trickling filter. These are quite high. Odor problem is there as a disadvantage of this type of pond because of the H2S production. However, this production of H2S can be controlled, or the formation of odors can be controlled with careful design loading rates. So BOD removal in an anaerobic pond is due to first the sedimentation of the settlable solids, the suspended organic particles which are settleable settle at the bottom. So from the wastewater they are removed, and then the subsequent anaerobic decomposition of these resulting sludge layers. So first the particles settle down, and then the second phenomena is anaerobic decomposition of that settled sludge. So desludging period is usually 3 to 5 years because of the large volume of the pond. There is no issue of immediate desludging, and the sludge is being decomposed anaerobically. So obviously the sludge is formed, the sludge layer is formed, but at the same time sludge layer is being decomposed or being eliminated. So after 3 to 5 years desludging may be required. Anaerobic ponds work well in warm climates because under the temperature, under the high temperature conditions, the oxidation of organic matter increases. The K value, the reaction rate increases. That's why under warm conditions, warm climates, anaerobic ponds gives very good efficiency. Anaerobic ponds are designed on the basis of volumetric BOD loading rate, which is also called the organic loading rate, represented with lambda V, and this is grams of BOD applied per cubic meter of pond volume per day. This is given by this equation in which lambda V represents the organic loading rate or BOD loading, Li is the influent BOD, Q discharge, and Va is anaerobic pond volume. So this is the same equation which you were using in case of the organic loading rate of a trickling filter, but only difference is the terminology is used here. V is replaced with by Va, and C, which is concentration of BOD, is replaced with Li. This is the same concentration of BOD in the influent. Now this lambda V should lie between 100 and 400 grams per cubic meter per day. So this is quite a high range. You can select 100 or you can select 200, 300 and 400 and in between any value. And how this value should be selected is based on the temperature of the area where you want to install the anaerobic ponds. Because we have discussed earlier that this is a temperature dependent process, and in extremely warm climates its efficiency is quite high. Therefore it depends on the temperature that what value should be selected from this range. So as I said earlier that the value of lambda V, which is organic loading rate, should be selected based on temperature. So here in this table the recommended design values for lambda V are given, which may be safely used for design purposes. Temperature, if it is less than 10 degrees Celsius, so volumetric loading rate should be minimum 100 grams per cubic meter per day, and if it is 10 to 20, then 20T 20T minus 100. So T over here would be the temperature. Suppose it is 15 degrees Celsius, so 20 multiplied by 15 minus 100 would be the appropriate organic loading rate to be used. Similarly, for higher temperature 25, this is 10T plus 100, and greater than 25 degrees Celsius, 350 grams per cubic meter per day. Very high organic loading rates can be used. What would be the benefit of using very high organic loading rates? That the required volume would reduce. If you use lesser organic loading rates, you will require more volume. And here in a second column, BOD removal in percentage is given depending upon the temperature. So you can see if the temperature is less than 10, only 40% removal of BOD is achievable, and if the temperature is high, greater than 25 degrees Celsius, up to 70% of BOD removal can be achieved. The source of this table and these design values is the Mara, Duncan Mara. This is basically a professor in Leeds University, Indian professor, who has done a lot of work related to waste stabilization ponds. He is considered the authority on this treatment technology. So once a value of lambda V has been selected, depending upon the temperature from this table, the anaerobic pond volume is then calculated using the equation which was provided in the previous slide. The mean hydraulic retention time in the pond is determined using this. Theta A is mean hydraulic retention time of anaerobic pond, and we know time detention time is related to discharge and volume with this equation. So you can find out the detention time if you are interested. Now using the volume determined by volumetric loading rate, you will divide that volume with the depth of the pond, and depth is commonly in the range of 2 to 5 meter for anaerobic ponds. So dividing volume with depth will give you the surface area of the pond. Now that surface area is mid-depth surface area of the pond. Since pond sides, all the four sides of the pond are at slope. So this is not the top area, this is not the bottom area, this is mid-depth surface area of the pond obtained by dividing the volume with depth. So now from mid-depth surface area, to obtain the dimensions at the top, at the surface of the pond and at the bottom of the pond, you will make use of the side slopes. One vertical and horizontal if it is a slope, then the bottom and top dimensions can be determined using uh, these small equations. I hope you have been doing these calculations for the canals, so you are well familiar with using of this side slope of the any pond or any canal. Now let's talk about the second type of pond, which is facultative ponds. And as their name indicates, some portion of organic matter will be oxidized aerobically and some will be oxidized anaerobically in the same pond. That would make it a facultative pond. Facultative ponds are quite shallower as compared to anaerobic ponds. These are 1 to 2 meter deep in general, and they are designed for BOD removal on the basis of a relatively low surface loading rate, 100 to 400 kilograms of BOD per hectare of pond surface area per day. Now you can see there are two differences in the design basis between the anaerobic and facultative ponds. Anaerobic ponds were designed on the basis of organic loading rate, volumetric loading rate, grams of BOD per cubic meter of pond volume per day. Here it is based on the surface loading rate in kilograms of BOD per hectare of the surface area of pond per day. So this is quite low as compared to the organic loading rate provided in the anaerobic ponds. So this shallow depth and low organic loading or low surface loading of BOD would permit the development of a healthy algal population. Algae, you know, is a microscopic plant which is which grows naturally in the water bodies. So since it is a water body, it's a pond. So in ponds, the growth of algae is quite common if low BOD loading and shallow depth of the pond is maintained. So if a healthy population of algae grows, they will be a constant source of oxygen in the pond. So that makes the upper portion and middle portion of the pond a bit aerobic. The bottom portion where sludge would be settled, or due to its greater depth, oxygen cannot penetrate there. This would be completely anaerobic. the top near the surface, the pond will be completely aerobic because oxygen is being transferred from the atmosphere, from the air, and the middle portion would be facultative in nature. Sometimes at the night time particularly, when algae would not be supplying the oxygen, this may become anaerobic, and at the daytime when algae would be supplying oxygen, this region or this depth range would become aerobic. That's why the term facultative is used for the middle range of this type of pond. Oxygen for VOD removal by the pond bacteria is mostly generated by the algal photosynthesis or algae. Now, facultative ponds can also be divided into two types or two categories. First type is primary facultative ponds which receive raw wastewater. It means there are no preceding anaerobic ponds. Raw wastewater after screens or great chamber directly goes to the facultative ponds. That's why the name primary facultative pond is used, because it also acts as primary sedimentation tank in place of anaerobic pond, and obviously it would serve the purpose of facultative pond as well. The second type is secondary facultative pond which receives the wastewater, settled wastewater, usually the effluent from anaerobic ponds. So there would be a bit difference in the treatment process occurring in both reactors or both the types of the ponds. Let's talk about the BOD removal process in secondary facultative ponds. Since they receive the settled effluent from the anaerobic pond, so major portion of suspended organic matter would have been removed in anaerobic ponds, and the remaining non-settleable or soluble BOD after an anaerobic pond is oxidized by bacteria in facultative ponds. There exists a mutualistic relationship between pond algae and pond bacteria, which is also known as bacteria-algae symbiosis. So let's uh, discuss about that symbiosis relation here with the help of this diagram. This is the organic matter present in the wastewater in soluble form, perhaps if it is a secondary facultative pond. So this would be non-settleable or soluble organic matter. Bacteria will use the oxygen to consume this organic matter, and they will grow new cells. They will grow in biomass, and they will oxidize or convert the organic matter into stable end products like carbon dioxide and ammonia, which is the end products of an aerobic organic matter oxidation process. So here is the algae which requires sunlight and which require ammonia and carbon dioxide for its growth. So the carbon dioxide and ammonia produced by bacteria as a result of organic matter oxidation is consumed by algae along with sunlight, and this algae produces oxygen along with growing its new cells. And this is the oxygen supply for bacteria to oxidize the organic matter. So bacteria produces carbon dioxide and ammonia required by algae, and algae produces oxygen required by bacteria. That's why this relationship is known as bacteria-algae symbiosis. Symbiosis is a type of relationship in which both the parties benefit from each other. So this is a mutualistic relationship between bacteria and algae. Due to this relationship, oxygen is continuously supplied for the bacteria to oxidize the organic matter. However, since the algae produces oxygen due to photosynthesis which occurs only in daytime, so at night time there would be different levels of oxygen, there would be less level of oxygen in the pond. That's why this area of the pond is known as facultative pond area, in which in the daytime there is abundance of oxygen present, whereas in the night time there would be little or no oxygen present. As far as BOD removal in primary facultative ponds is concerned, the functions of anaerobic pond and secondary facultative ponds are combined in a primary facultative pond. It means the wastewater, the raw wastewater comes in primary facultative pond. So first the organic matter which is suspended, which is settleable, will settle down at the bottom and oxidized anaerobically by bacteria. So this is what happens in an anaerobic pond, and the soluble portion of organic matter would be oxidized by bacteria with the help of oxygen provided by algae with bacteria-algae symbiosis process. This is the process of a secondary facultative pond. So both of these processes of anaerobic and secondary facultative are combined for the removal of BOD in primary facultative ponds. So as we have discussed earlier, the design of facultative ponds is based on surface BOD loading. Lambda S is the symbol by which it is denoted, and its units are kilograms of BOD applied per hectare of pond surface area per day. And this is given by Li multiplied by Q divided by area. This is BOD load divided by area, and 10 is just a conversion factor for multiple units. This will give you the pond area in square meters. The permissible design values of lambda S are again selected on the basis of temperature, because we have discussed earlier that this is completely a natural process. So with large surface area, so its treatment removal efficiency would largely depend on the temperature of the ambient environment. So appropriate design equation given by Duncan Mara is provided here. Lambda S is 350 1.107 minus 0.002 T raised to power T minus 25. T over here is the temperature. Whatever temperature is at the local conditions, you can plug in the value here. Let's say it's 20 degrees Celsius, so 20 raised to the power 20 minus 25 will give you the value of lambda S to be used for design of facultative ponds. So you may use the equation provided on the previous slide, referred to as equation 3, to determine the lambda S values based on temperature, or you can make use of this table. This is one and the same thing. The values here are obtained from that equation, solving that equation at various temperatures. So once a suitable value of lambda S has been selected, the pond area can be calculated using equation 2. Equation 2 was lambda S equals 10 multiplied by influent BOD multiplied by discharge divided by area of facultative pond. So from that equation you can determine area of facultative pond once lambda S value is selected based on temperature. And then its retention time can be determined using this relationship. This is volume over discharge, and this is equal to retention time, we know that. So pond depth is usually 1.5 meters, 1 to 2 meters is the common range, and Q is the average flowing cubic meters per day. The third type of pond in the WSP system is maturation pond, and the purpose of maturation pond is to remove the pathogens from the wastewater. Since the organic matter would largely have been removed up to the facultative ponds, so the treated effluent comes to the maturation ponds, and a series of maturation ponds in this depth range 1 to 1.5 meter receives the effluent from a facultative pond in which the organic matter quantity is very less. So the typical section of a maturation pond is represented here. This is 1 to 1.5 meter deep. Influent is coming from the facultative ponds, so very little amount of organic matter would have been left in this effluent. Very low organic loading here and very little depth, so oxygen can penetrate from the surface. So it is a fully aerobic pond, and sunlight can penetrate due to its shallow depth to the bottom. And this sunlight also plays very important role for the removal of the pathogens in this pond. The size and number of maturation ponds is governed mainly by the required bacteriological quality of the final effluent. How much bacteria are required in the effluent, that will determine what size and what numbers of these ponds are to be provided. Maturation ponds are well oxygenated throughout the day because of their shallow depth, because of the wind mixing, and because of the absorption of oxygen from the surface. So as is mentioned here, a series of maturation ponds are used because uh, the required removal of pathogens is quite large, 99.99% sometimes. For that much removal, very large surface area of a single pond would be required. Therefore, multiple ponds are provided in series to enhance the efficiency of pond so that the required area may be reduced. The principal mechanisms for the removal of fecal bacteria in facultative as well as maturation ponds are discussed here. Some amounts of pathogens are also removed in the facultative pond, but mostly the pathogen removal is accomplished in maturation ponds. However, the principal mechanisms are same whether it's a facultative or a maturation pond. The first important factor is time, detention time, and the high temperature and high pH greater than 9, since we discussed in the start of the biological treatment topic that bacteria can survive only at a narrow range of pH. So appropriate range for the growth of bacteria is 6.5 to 8.5 or 6 to 9. So greater than 9 pH can cause the death of the bacteria, the killing of the bacteria. This high pH is due to the photosynthesis, which is occurring due to the production of algae in facultative and as well as maturation ponds. And high light intensity can directly kill the pathogens together with high dissolved oxygen concentration. So these are two necessary requirements for solar disinfection. Solar disinfection means the solar radiation in the presence of high dissolved oxygen concentration can remove the pathogens, can kill the pathogens. So these are the three factors which contribute towards the overall removal of fecal bacteria in facultative and maturation ponds. So this is represented with this diagram as well. The sunlight increases the temperature, so that kills the bacteria. Sunlight promotes the growth of algae, photosynthesis, which increases the pH, that can also kill the pathogens. And as a result of photosynthesis, dissolved oxygen is also increased. So high DO concentration and the light intensity UV radiations can lead to photooxidation, the killing of microorganisms, the common phenomena known as solar disinfection. So in this diagram you can see sunlight is playing threefold role here. So all the three factors depend on the sunlight. So since in maturation ponds the depth is very shallow, sunlight can penetrate throughout the depth of the pond, therefore the killing of bacteria, the removal of bacteria is quite high in maturation ponds. So for bacteria the removal mechanisms depends on the certain factors which we have discussed in the previous slide: high temperature, light intensity with high DO, and the high pH value. Whereas for viruses and parasites, the mechanism of removal are a bit different. For viruses, the absorption onto cell-level solids, including the pod algae, and the consequent settling of these cell-level solids is the primary mechanism by which the viruses are removed. Parasites or protozoa and helminthics, they are both categorized as parasites, protozoa and helminthics. They are removed by sedimentation, and consequently most removal takes place in anaerobic and facultative ponds. Similarly for viruses, most of the removal occurs in facultative and anaerobic ponds. Only the bacteria are left, which are the target removal pathogens in the maturation bonds. Method of Marais is generally used to design a bond series for fecal coliform removal in maturation bonds. This method assumes that fecal coliform removal can be modeled by first order kinetics in a completely mixed reactor. So considering a maturation bond as CSTR completely mixed reactor, where complete mixing occurs by the wind effect. Because they are shallow, they have very large surface areas, so wind can induce complete mixing of the contents of the reactor. So it can be considered as a completely mixed reactor, CSTR. So since the kinetics applied to bacterial removal are first order kinetics, so first order CSTR equation can be used, which you have used in the previous lecture for the aerated lagoon effluent quality as well. There you used L sign for BOD, here we are using number N sign for number of bacteria, because bacterial concentrations are given as numbers per 100 ml. So Ni effluent concentration of bacteria equals Ni over 1 plus Kt theta. Theta is the retention time of the bonds. In each of the bonds, some removal would have been occurring because of the theta value, retention time and the overall removal rate Kt. The terminologies of the equation are defined. Ne is the number of fecal coliform per 100 ml in the effluent, Ni number of fecal coliform per 100 ml of the influent, Kt is first order rate constant for fecal coliform removal in per day, and theta is retention time of the corresponding pond. So if you are talking about maturation ponds, this would be the retention time of the maturation pond. The value of all the reaction rate coefficients, particularly the BOD, and now we are talking about the bacterial removal rate coefficient Kt, they are all temperature dependent. They are highly dependent on temperature. So Kt at 20 degrees Celsius is usually 2.6 per day for fecal coliform. For temperatures other than this, the temperature correction equation can be used. 2.6 the Kt at 20 degrees Celsius, and theta value, temperature correction coefficient for fecal coliform, is 1.19 raised to power T minus 20. T is any temperature. This would be the ambient temperature where you are designing the maturation pond, where you want to install the maturation pond. Calculating the removal of Helminthax is a bit different than the fecal coliform, as fecal coliform removal can be estimated using the first order CSTR equation, whereas Helminthax removal, since it largely depends on the detention time only, because principal mechanism of Helminthax removal is sedimentation. So larger would be the detention time, larger would be sedimentation and removal of these eggs. Therefore, their removal equation is given, which includes only theta values. Theta is the detention time or retention time of anaerobic pond, then facultative pond, and then maturation pond, because Helminthax removals can occur in all these three ponds, and principally it occurs in anaerobic and facultative ponds. So this table represents the design values for percentage Helminthax removal in individual anaerobic, facultative or maturation ponds for various hydraulic retention times starting from 1 to 20. So if 1 day is the retention time of an anaerobic pond, so it can give 74.6% removal of Helminthax. If 20 days is the overall retention time of 2 or 3 ponds, it can give up to 99.93% removal of Helminthax. So depending upon the detention time, you can determine the removal of Helminthax from wastewater. Let's design a WSP system to treat a wastewater flow of 10,000 cubic meters per day with BOD up to 50 milligrams per liter. The design temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. Now to solve this example problem, we have two options with us. First option is to use anaerobic and facultative ponds in combination. At first, an anaerobic pond will be provided and then a facultative pond following that anaerobic pond. So this combination is one option. The second option is that you eliminate anaerobic pond and raw wastewater directly goes to facultative pond, which would be then termed as primary facultative pond. We have discussed these configurations and these terminologies in the lecture. So we can solve this example for these two options. The first option is anaerobic plus facultative pond. The first type of pond in this configuration is anaerobic pond. To find out the volume of anaerobic pond, first we have to determine the design volumetric loading rate, and that could be determined based on the temperature. Temperature given is 15 degrees Celsius, and the equation from the table provided in the theory lecture is 20T minus 100 for this temperature of 15 degrees Celsius. So this gives you the answer in 200 grams of BOD per cubic meter of pond volume per day. By solving this for 15 degree, you get this volumetric design loading rate. Now using the equation of the volumetric loading rate of anaerobic pond, where lambda V is the design volumetric loading rate, Li is influent BOD, Q is discharge, and Va is volume of anaerobic pond. So by plugging in all the values known to us, lambda V 200 just calculated based on the temperature given. Influent BOD was 250 milligrams per liter, or equivalent units are grams per cubic meter. Discharge is 10,000 cubic meters per day, and Va is unknown, volume of anaerobic pond. So by solving this equation, we get the volume of anaerobic pond as 12,500 cubic meter. The next step is to determine the detention time of anaerobic pond, and detention time is related with volume and discharge by this equation. You are well familiar with this. This is by the definition of the discharge. Discharge is volume per unit time. So time would be volume over discharge. Now volume is known, discharge is already provided. So detention time by this comes out to be 1.25 days. Now this is greater than 1 day, so it's okay, because for anaerobic pond the minimum detention time should be 1 day. So it meets this condition, so our design is okay. Let's assume another scenario in which the design detention time comes out to be 0.7 or 0.8 days or whatever value less than 1 day. So what you will do in that case, you will take this detention time as 1 day, you will determine the volume from here, and that will be the design volume. Then you will eliminate this first step, because in that case the detention time would govern the design. However, in this case, in this example, it's greater than 1 day, so it's okay. We can proceed. Now, as we have discussed in theory lecture, that depth of anaerobic ponds is from 3 to 5 meters. So taking a middle value of depth of 4 meters, we can determine the area of anaerobic pond by dividing volume with the depth. So area of anaerobic pond is 3125 square meters. Now the second thing we have to determine is the BOD removal in anaerobic pond at again the 15 degrees Celsius temperature. By using this equation, which is also obtained from the table provided in theory lecture, 2T plus 20 is the equation. So 2 multiplied by 15 plus 20 gives you the value of 50% BOD removal in this anaerobic pond at the temperature. So you can see that effluent quality solely depends on the temperature. So effluent BOD from anaerobic pond would be, if 50% is removed, 50% would be left. So 250 multiplied by 0.5, this is 125 milligrams per liter. This is effluent BOD from anaerobic pond, and this wastewater will go to facultative pond. Therefore, this will be influent BOD for the facultative pond design. Now in this option we have determined the volume of anaerobic pond. Now we are going to determine the volume and area of facultative pond. So for facultative pond, the design loading is in the form of surface loading rate, kilograms of BOD per hectare of the pond area per day, and the equation to determine this design loading is given here, where T is the temperature, the design temperature for treatment plant, which is 15 degrees Celsius. So using 15 degrees Celsius temperature, we get this value of design loading, 167 kilograms of BOD per hectare per day. Now using the equation of surface loading of a facultative pond, the lambda is design loading 167, Li is the influent BOD to facultative pond, Q is discharge, and A is area of the facultative pond, AF. By providing or by putting all the values here in this equation and solving this, we get area of the facultative pond as 74,850 square meters. The area of the facultative pond is calculated. Now we will take some depth, taking average depth of 1.5 meter for facultative pond. The detention time can be calculated using volume over discharge equation. So volume is area multiplied by depth. By solving this, we get the time of 11.2 days, which is greater than 4 days. 4 days is the minimum detention time recommended for a facultative pond. It's okay, we can proceed with this detention time, with this area and with this volume calculated. Total area for option 1 comprises the area of anaerobic pond plus area of facultative pond, so it's 77,975 square meters. So the second option we have is only facultative pond. No anaerobic pond is provided. Wastewater directly goes to the facultative pond, which is called primary facultative pond in this situation. So for this type of facultative pond, design loading would be same as for the previously used facultative pond, because design loading depends on the temperature, and temperature is unchanged because we are comparing just two options at the same temperature. So lambda S is 167 kilograms of BOD per hectare per day at 15 degrees Celsius. We will use the same here. The only thing changed is 250 milligram per liter of influent BOD, because now raw wastewater is coming to facultative pond. So influent BOD is of that raw wastewater, which is 250. So using this BOD, by solving this equation, we get the area of facultative pond as 149,700 square meters, 1.49 into 10 raised to the power 5 square meters. So this much area is required for a single facultative pond if no anaerobic pond is provided before that. Now you can compare this area required for option 2, in which anaerobic pond is not provided, with the area required for the option 1, which was anaerobic pond followed by a facultative pond. We see much larger area is required for option 2 as compared to option 1. The conclusion is that the use of anaerobic ponds results in land saving of around 4,800%. So this confirms the observation of Professor Garrett Marais, which stated that the anaerobic pre-treatment is so advantageous that first consideration in the design of a series of ponds should be always to include the anaerobic pre-treatment. So anaerobic pre-treatment can solve around 48% area of land in this example problem. Now in example problem 2, you have to design a WSP system as in design example 1. Means the same data applies here, discharge of 10,000 cubic meters per day and BOD of 250 milligrams per liter. But we have to design this system now for unrestricted irrigation. This means that the effluent of the pond system would be utilized, would be reused for irrigation purposes. And what type of irrigation? Unrestricted irrigation. The guidelines for unrestricted irrigation provide a limit to restrict the concentration of fecal coliform as 1000 per 100 ml. That would be provided as note of this slide. The wastewater contains 5 into 10 raised to the power 7 fecal coliform per 100 ml. This is concentration of fecal coliform bacteria in the wastewater, and as we know that the concentration of coliforms is represented in numbers of bacteria per 100 ml. So as I was saying that desired fecal coliform in the effluent of WSP system is 1000 per 100 ml for unrestricted irrigation. This is guideline of World Health Organization provided by the document of WHO in 1989 guidelines. The revised or recent guidelines of 2006 provide some stricter, stringent standards for the use of wastewater for unrestricted irrigation. However, up till now, in many of the developing countries, the same guidelines of 1989 are being used, in which fecal coliform concentration should be 1000 per 100 ml if the wastewater is to be used for unrestricted irrigation. Now to solve the example problem 2, first we have to design anaerobic and facultative pond system, the solution to which was the example problem 1. The same solution will be applicable because the data is same as example problem 1. Just now one new condition is provided in the problem statement, that the wastewater is to be used for unrestricted irrigation after treatment. Therefore, fecal coliform reduction is required, and for that purpose, for bacterial removal, the third type of pond, which is maturation pond, has to be provided. For design of maturation pond, we will use the equation of first order CSTR in series, in which Kt is the overall removal rate constant for fecal coliform, and at 20 degrees Celsius this is 2.6 per day as discussed in the lecture. So for any other temperature, such as now it's 15 degrees Celsius, it can be adjusted using this equation, where this was T minus 20, so T is now 15 degrees Celsius. So it comes out to be 1.08 per day, which is far less as compared to what it was at 20 degrees Celsius. So as for first order reactions, be it for BOD or for coliform, the removal rate decreases with decreasing temperature and it increases with increasing temperature. Now if we use a single maturation pond, just for example, we will use this equation of first order CSTR, Ne equals Ni over 1 plus Kt theta. Theta is detention time of the pond. Now we know what concentration in the effluent is required. It is 1000 fecal coliform per 100 ml. Influent concentration is 1 into 10 raised to power 7 per 100 ml. Kt now adjusted for 15 degrees Celsius is 1.08 and detention time is unknown. We will determine by solving this equation. So if we solve this, the detention time is 9,258 days, which is obviously impractical because it's very high and unachievable value. Now we will try to solve this by using multiple number of maturation ponds, and the number of maturation ponds in series are represented with M. As we know by our previous discussion of reactor theory, to increase the efficiency of a CSTR, smaller CSTRs in series can be applied. So for solving this, you can use multiple numbers. Let's say you will start from 2 maturation ponds, then you solve it for 3 or 4 or 5 maturation ponds. And let me, to reduce the time, take 6 maturation ponds. So using this equation, the same equation for first order CSTR, now it is in series, so it is raised to the power m. M stands the number of maturation ponds. So effluent is 1000, influent is 1 into 10 is plus 7. Rest of the things they are same, K is same, 1.08. Just one thing is changed, that now 6 maturation ponds will be installed in series. So M is 6 here. By solving this, we get the detention time of 3.37 days. It's okay because minimum detention time for maturation ponds recommended is 3 days. So any detention time greater than 3 days would be okay. By solving with, for example, 5 or 4 number of ponds, you can get the detention time of 6 or 7 days, so that would also be okay. But obviously the larger detention time would be requiring the larger volume or larger surface area of the pond. So it's better to keep it near to the minimum value, and minimum is 3 days, so 3.37 days detention time is very okay or very acceptable as at 6 number of maturation ponds. So volume of the pond can be determined by multiplying the discharge with the detention time. So it comes out to be 33,700 cubic meters. Usually the depth of maturation ponds is from 1 to 1.5 meters. So let's take the depth as 1 meter. Area of the one pond would be volume divided by depth. The answer is 33,700 square meters. This is area of one pond because the volume calculated on the previous slide is of one pond. As the equation we have used for CSTRs in series provided you the detention time of one pond, a single pond. So if you want to determine the total area of 6 maturation ponds, you will multiply 33,700 by 6. So it's roughly equal to 200,000 square meters. Now total area required for the whole WSP system, including the anaerobic, facultative and maturation ponds, can be determined by adding those areas. This is area of anaerobic plus facultative pond, which was option 1 in example problem 1, and this is the area of the maturation pond. So total area is roughly around 280,000 square meters or 28 hectares. Now one major important factor which played the role in all this design is the temperature, design temperature. Now how this design temperature is selected, it is the average temperature of the coldest month in an area, because that would be the sensitive month, or you can say the critical month for reduced efficiency of the WSP system. However, if we change that temperature slightly, we increase that temperature, you will feel that the area required for all the ponds would drastically reduce, because the removal of POD, the loading rates would increase, the removal would increase, the K value for maturation pond would increase. So you will feel that there is a lot of difference in the required area for a higher temperature as compared to what you have just solved for 15 degrees Celsius. Therefore, I encourage you to redo the examples 1 and 2 for slightly increased temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. One more thing you can do for your practice is to calculate the dimensions of the pond, top and bottom dimensions. The area calculated in all of these examples, problem 1 and 2, are mid-depth surface areas as discussed in the lecture. This is mid-depth surface area. You can take any length to width ratio, appropriate length to width ratio. You can find out length into width. that would be surface area. Those dimensions would be at mid depth of the pond. From that, you can determine the bottom dimensions and top dimensions by using the side slope. So this is just for your practice. I hope you will solve it. If you will have any question, you may ask. So this is all for the topic of waste stabilization pond systems. I hope you have learned the basic concepts related to WSP system, different types of the ponds, and then how to design these pond systems. Thank you.